It's week 1 in our year of embroidery stitches, and today, before we even get stuck into any of the stitches, I'm going to talk about how to split the thread and tie a knot, because these are 2 essential elements of embroidery. So first up, throughout all these videos, I'm using DMC Stranded Cotton. So these are threads designed for embroidery, and they're called stranded cotton because you can see the end of the thread is made up of 6 strands all wound together. Now, the simplest way you vary the design or your style of embroidery is by varying the number of strands you stitch with. If you stitch with all 6 strands, you'll end up with a design that's really thick. If you stitch with fewer strands, then you'll be able to get more delicacy, but your design won't feel quite so 3D. Throughout most of these stitches, I'm going to be working with 3 strands unless I tell you otherwise. So, how to split the thread. First, work with about an arm's length of thread. If you work with any longer than that, then you'll find the whole thing becomes an acrobatic exercise. If you work with any shorter than that, then you'll find yourself constantly rethreading the needle. Now, I get my thread between my thumb and forefinger, and you see all my different strands here. All I do to separate the thread is I grab one of the strands and then I pull. And as I pull, the thread will bunch up underneath, but don't worry, keep pulling and it will all pull one strand out. So you see, I have one strand there. I'm going to repeat. So again, grab my one strand and I pull it out. Now, if you try to grab more than one strand at a time, inevitably you'll end up having a knot. So don't be impatient with this, separate them individually. And take your remaining 3 strands, wind them back on the bobbin so you come back and you use them later on. So you are going to be doing a lot of separating thread. I grab my strands back together again and I thread them through the needle. So, got my 3 strands here all threaded together and I'm threading them through the needle. Now, when it comes to your needle, you've got choices about what size needles to work with. This one on the left hand side is a size 5 embroidery needle. This one on the right hand side is a size 22 chenille needle. Now, whilst embroidery needles are great for things like French knots, they're really good at keeping your French knot neat, actually they're quite hard to thread. So often within my work, I'll end up using these larger needles unless the stitch particularly benefits from a small needle. As we go through the year of stitches, I will tell you when a stitch benefits from a small needle. Otherwise, assume that you're okay using a large needle. Now, this is one essential bit you're going to have to do throughout, and that is tying a knot. This here is my granny's method. My granny is 101 years old, still stitching every day, so she knows a thing or two about sewing. So what I do is I get the long end of my thread, I've got my needle, and I put the thread against the shaft of the needle so that this is going round in a circle. So you see, I'm going round in a circle. I'm going to hold the tip of the thread against the needle, and I'm right-handed, so I'm holding this in my right hand, and with my left hand, I wrap the thread around the tip of the needle. The more times I wrap it, the bigger the knot will be. Then I grab where I've wrapped it between my thumb and forefinger and bring my needle up through it. I keep pulling and it will create a knot right at the end of the thread. Your perfect knot method. And that is all we're doing for week 1. You're going to get super comfortable tying knots and splitting threads, because that is an essential step you're going to do through every other week. I'll see you next week when we'll start our first stitch.